the nation continues to mourn and remember the 31 victims from this weekend's mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, President Trump blamed violent video games, white supremacy, and mental illness for the attacks.
And he's now calling for red flag laws to identify potential shooters before they commit the crimes. Joining us this morning to talk a little bit more about red flag laws, especially here in the Carolinas, is Penelope Hefner, attorney from Sodoma Law Union. Penelope, thanks for coming in. I know a difficult subject to kind of talk about, and there's so many questions going on right now. We know that about 17 states have the red flag laws. Kind of break it down on the simplest level. What is it and what's it for?
So red flag laws are the foundation for what is known as extreme risk protective orders or gun violence restraining orders. And the concept is that someone can approach a judge and seek an order to have weapons removed from someone that's deemed to be a threat to themselves or others.
So we just ran that story. You were mentioning this, the story about the grandmother who turned her grandson in. Now, there is no law to protect or to put that in place as of now if it happened in North or South Carolina.
Right.
But this would be the type of thing where that would be called into play. Is that right?
Sure, yeah.
So, okay, so break it down also just where we are in terms of our states, North and South Carolina, because North Carolina has something in the works. South Carolina is still just as is.
That's right. So South Carolina has nothing pending or enacted. North Carolina, right now, it's HB 454, so it's being considered by the House.
What are some of the red flags? I mean, I guess it's kind of subjective when you think about, you know, that we had that story about the grandmother who thought, well, something's not adding up right. He's talked about violence. Some people aren't going to verbalize the threat. You might just see an action going on. What are some things that we should look for that could be a red flag?
So looking at them kind of in general, types of things that judges are considering are a past of violent behavior, brandishing weapons and making threats on social media. That seems to be a big one. Having violations of other restraining orders. So like in family law, we see one spouse has a restraining order against another. They violate it over and over. They're making threats to that spouse. That, coupled with the ownership of weapons, could rise to the level that's required in red flag laws.
Let me ask you this, just from a practical perspective, if you are concerned, if there is enough of a concern that you would petition a judge for a red flag to be implemented here, what kind of timeline are you looking at? Because it would seem that this would need to be sort of an immediate action taken, but is that the case? I mean, how quickly can we expect?
I mean, just like currently right now, at least in North Carolina, if you're seeking a restraining order from, let's say, one spouse or domestic partner from another, you're able to get in with a magistrate or judge pretty quickly. I would suspect the same would apply. You're not talking about waiting days or weeks. I agree. Then it would most likely be a moot point.
We know before the Parkland shooting last year, only 5 states in the country have this law. Now 12 more are tacked on here. So now there's 17. North Carolina now has the bill out. Why would you not want to sign this into effect? Like, what's the harm of having this? I think we should all look out for red flags.
Yeah, I think that people on both sides are in agreement with that. I don't know. There is some opposition. There's going to be opposition to anything. But again, the thought being that because it's a red flag, that's what's going to set it apart. It's not just someone making an accusation against someone else. There would have to be enough evidence to convince a judge that this is a necessary measure to take.
Finally, before you go, regardless of where someone stands on this issue, for or against, what can people do to let their voices be heard?
I would imagine you can write to your local, your state Congress people and let them know what your position is, make phone calls, write letters. But I think it's doing some research and making sure you understand what would constitute a red flag or what wouldn't.
And don't you think it's important that in this discussion, I don't think a lot of us even know what the laws are, whether you're a gun owner or not. Just educate yourself on what the laws are. Start with that before you decide to get in all kind of arguments and disagree maybe with someone else.
Agree.
Penelope, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you clearing that up a little bit. We're going to take a break, guys. We're going to start again.